And we're live. Happy Saturday, everyone. How's it going? I want to just say, welcome, my friends. I know that you are here for the same reasons as I am. I mean, I've been deeply into this research because I have the MTHFR mutation and food allergies and autoimmune issues and other symptoms all directly related to my underlying DNA mutations and my environment and the methylation pathways in my body. And so I'm going to try to cover as much as I can in the most simple terms, but I want you to feel free as I go through this, or if you watch it again later, or if you just didn't get a chance to watch it until later, to reach out if there is anything that you're unsure of. I know that a lot of you are just learning about this connection to your wellness goals, and so that's okay. So the most talked about genetic mutation of the last decade is the different varieties of MTHFR mutations. Now, if you Google MTHFR, there are about 1,700,000 results. So it's going to be really complicated, and I don't want it to be complicated for you. I have what's considered to be a more serious MTHFR variation. My daughter has the other MTHFR mutation, and it runs in my family, and some of us have both of the MTHFR mutations. But it's not just in my family. It really is in about 25% of the population have this genetic mutation. Yes, both my mother and my mother-in-law have this MTHFR mutation. And so DNA is kind of weird. So like my daughter has the same mutation as they do. Mine comes from another DNA source. My father, because he's passed long ago, I don't have the opportunity to test his DNA and to see if it comes from there. But just know that it is wrapped up in your whole DNA system. So all of those with this MTHFR mutation, what you'll find is that this is a genetic alteration that's very notorious for causing high heavy metals in our system. And so these heavy metals in our system become harder to be broken down properly. And so instead, they just become stored and free floating sort of nutrients, or synthetic nutrients, as I should say. So this storage, it can cause a list of symptoms that include fatigue, and that is usually the first signal. And a lot of people miss it. A lot of people automatically go to thyroid, or they automatically go to, being iron deficient, or just because they're a parent. And so people miss that they are tired because they have this genetic mutation. So the hardest part for us to realize is that these heavy metals, they can be passed down generationally. So what your ancestors were absorbing, this becomes yours. Those, metal fillings, the metals from the mines, all of these things are passed down, and they're passed into the brains of children in the womb. Now, I had 6 cavities my first time I went to the dentist at age 5. It wasn't until after I had my daughter that I had my mouth full of metal removed. And so I kind of cringe thinking about this after having my daughter and learning this, about what extra I have impacted on her system. So methylation can be understood like a team. It's a team working towards an end project. And each member of the team has a job to do in order to complete this. And so when a system is undermethylated, there may be a team member that is hoarding rather than passing on the job. And so the way I explain the main mutation I have is that I just tell people that I am folic intolerant. And so that means that I can eat folic, I can have folic acid. Anyone with MTHR can have folic acid, but I struggle, like with dairy, I struggle to actually digest, actually use the folic acid. And so that can cause all kinds of issues. So if you think about it, when you are lactose intolerant, it means that you don't have the enzyme to break down that lactose. So it's the same sort of thing. That's why I call it folic intolerant, because I don't have the enzyme to break down the folic properly. And so the issues it causes, the main one that people see and they may not understand and they freak out, is that it causes issues with homocysteine. Now, homocysteine is a sulfur amino acid, and many people struggle with sulfur. Eat much broccoli lately, but this metabolism stands at the intersection of two pathways, remethylation to methionine, and this requires folate and vitamin B12. And so these are the two vitamins that people that talk MTHFR know about but don't quite understand. Now, low folate levels can mask a B12 deficiency. And so when your body is converting these low levels of vitamin B6, B12, and folate, this is when you will see the higher homocysteine levels. Now, just like I just said, as sulfur as an amino acid, homocysteine is a common amino acid found in your blood. So you get it mostly from eating meat. And high levels of it can be linked to early development of heart disease. So you can understand why plants are really essential when you are dealing with these mutations. So there's no universal recommendation for checking for homocysteine levels. The test is still relatively expensive, and it isn't widely available, and insurance rarely covers it. Yesterday, I talked about the ketogenic diet and using a vegan or just a very heavy plant-based routine as part of that. And so I wanted to talk about that first because over 50% of your methylation reactions involve the phospholipids. So monounsaturated fats, the monounsaturated fatty acids, they're a class of fatty acids that are found in the foods like olive oil and nuts and avocados. And lipids are insoluble biomolecules. And so they're defined by an overall lack of having polarity necessary for solubility in water-based solutions. Now, if you've read my book, Exploring Aromatherapy, that whole idea of the polarity will make a little bit more sense. So lipids, they play a vital role in so many cellular processes, including energy storage, structural support, protection and communication between cells, biosalts, and fat-soluble vitamins are lipids that we are having derived from cholesterol and related lipid molecules. So these living cells, of course, are complex units of life, and they rely on this unique structure of the phospholipids. And phospholipids form a lipid membrane around a cell's interior that protects the cell by providing a selective barrier that regulates movement of these molecules between the inside and the outside of our cells. So understanding this unique structure of a phospholipid biomolecule will provide some insight for you into how the phospholipid barriers form and protect our cells. Now, like I believe I said, and if I didn't, I'm going to say it now, is that it takes at least 4 years is the half-life of the lipids around our cells. So when you start this process, you need to know that it's not going to be simple and you're done. This is a decade-long process to fully heal your cells. And your cells will use those bad oils that are non-communicative if that's all it has. And if we talk in just a minute here about toxins in these fats, I think what you'll start to see is how all of this is related, and why not only do I use a pure plant-based complete omega supplement rather than a fish oil supplement, but I do my best with my allergies to get as many healthy plant-based phospholipid cells for my cells as I can. And that makes a big difference. It really does. I think that it's essential for us to know that all of this is related to that methylation. So methylation is a common epigenetic signaling tool. And if you've heard the word epigenetic before, when we're generally talking about that is the way that our genetics can be altered and cells can be turned on. DNA can be turned on or turned off. It's called gene expression. And methylation is this common epigenetic signaling tool that cells use to talk to each other and lock those genes in the off position. So what if you turn off your aging genes? Wouldn't that be great? So insufficient dietary intake or excessive loss of macronutrients, that's your fats, proteins, carbohydrates, and the micronutrients that I'm talking about strongly affect these phospholipids of cellular membranes in all living organisms. And it leads to pathophysiological situations of clinical importance in human health. So now, again, remember, macro is fat, protein, and carbohydrates. Micro is the essential nutrients that we get, like the vitamins and minerals in our food. So what happens if you can't test for homocysteine then? And many of us can't test for that, and many of you can't test for your genetic mutations either. So what can you do to be safe with your choices to support your body? Well, first, you know that the body stores toxins in those fat cells. And when it needs quick storage, it will store where it can. So maybe if it's not having a fat cell that it can quickly get to, or it has to make some new fat cells, it's going to store in your breast tissue or your liver or maybe your brain, maybe in your gut. Endotoxin is defined as any toxin secreted by a microorganism and released into the surrounding environment only when it dies. So an endotoxin can be considered as any metabolite or cell wall that is a constituent released by gut bacteria that damages our human physiology. And what they found is that high levels of endotoxins also cause these epigenetic changes between various gut, and it's also been found to have a link to obesity. So we have talked now about before the lack of fiber, and so I want you to really get that this lack of fiber is causing your body to start eating itself. And that starts causing that leaky gut so that proteins and endotoxins get into the bloodstream and into our bodies. And that's what's causing so many problems. One of which I see a lot is an immune reaction that we recognize as an allergy. And I know a lot about allergies. You know, they used to call me Bubble Girl for a reason. So mast cell disorder, which I have seen often goes hand in hand with methylation imbalances. In an allergic reaction, these mast cells released histamine, which triggers those allergy symptoms. Let's see. I know you just said something, Pam, but I don't have my glasses on, so give me one quick second, and I'm going to see what you said up here where I can see it. Oh, okay, yeah, so listen to the whole thing later. It will be, if you can't see it immediately, if you go into my photos and into the albums, you'll see a video album. And that's where all of these videos that I've done will be. So, if you've heard of this pervasive herbicide, glyphosate, think about the fact that it's been fed to your meat supply, your dairy supply, sprayed on your produce, sprayed on your neighbor's lawn and your neighbor's driveway, and it's in the cotton clothing that you're wearing. It's found in your favorite bottle of wine and your craft beer, and even those fields that used to grow cotton and now are growing other things, including a lot of hemp down in the south. That used to have the glyphosate in it, and it still does. It's interesting, moms across America found that glyphosate is even in vaccines because of the gelatin that they're using. So it's in micro amounts, but we're getting amounts of it everywhere. And so when my daughter and I have been vaccinated, we've used the preservative-free vaccines due to our allergies to try to lessen some of those micro amounts, as well as to eliminate this sort of micro amount of peanut oil getting into our system, because in the US and most countries there's a small amount of that in vaccines, and over in Israel they use sesame oil instead. So the proteins most often implicated in vaccine allergies are egg and gelatin. There are perhaps some rare reactions to yeast, or I have to be concerned with latex because I have a hypersensitivity to latex. So I have to ask you, as allergies are increasing, what if the truth is that we are just glyphosate intolerant? What if it isn't, we put so much impact on these vaccines that have saved so many lives, but what if it isn't the vaccines at all? What if your supplements, just like your food, contain this glyphosate gelatin or yeast or heavy metals, and your body just cannot eliminate them because it can't methylate properly? Glyphosate is a metal chelator, and so it binds to heavy metals. So if you're getting both, you're getting double. So it's important to understand this next piece, is that the amino acid glycine is especially abundant in gelatin. And that is what our body will use. That's one of the things our body uses a lot in our skin and our bones. And so there are wonderful vegetarian sources like non-GMO soybeans, spinach, cauliflower, cabbage, pumpkin, banana, kiwi, cucumber, beans. But most of my customers have been getting their glycine from fish, meat, and dairy. And it's an essential amino. We need glycine because it supports those functional repairs. But what we're finding is these new studies are showing that this highly needed glycine is highly needed in the methylation process. And that big bad meanie glyphosate can move in and take that spot where the glycine is looking to go. So it's similar to how folic binds to those folate receptors and just hangs around without being able to be used, since those with MTHFR are lacking the enzymes to properly move forward in the methylation process. So as we're building our bodies, we are perhaps missing the glycine, and the glyphosate is taking this place in our protein building process. And so where are we using glycine that now we are getting glyphosate? And that would be in our nerves, our bones, our skin, our muscles, our gut lining, and especially important to form glutathione, which is that mother of all antioxidants. So this is where the folic and folate come into play. If you can't break down that folic acid in the total amounts that we are eating these days, and if you look at the packaged foods that we're eating, a lot of these foods are enriched with folic acid. And Then you try to eat some folate, you're like, well, I'm getting my greens too. Well, it doesn't matter because not all of that folate now can get to those follic receptors. And when we eat folate, this is important, it's all coming around in a circle. When we eat folate-rich foods, the glycine adds to methyl, to folate, to make methylfolate. How many of you are taking L-MTHF? That is the process. It is folate with glycine, with this methyl group to folate to make methylfolate out of it. So we can use it, but it needs to get that out of glycine. So when glyphosate takes the place of glycine, then the folate conversion is done. With no folate conversion, you will see a stoppage in this methylation pathway. So we're not methylating for so many reasons. We lack the whole micronutrients we have. Too many toxins are accumulating in our bodies, and we're destroying our gut. So no methylation, no new healthy cells, to line the intestines, no methylation, no ability to inactivate histamine, so our histamine levels rise, our mast cells get overactive, and our methylation levels just keep lowering. So if you have a mast cell problem, if you have a histamine problem, you have to look outward at what is impacting your methylation. But most important, if we have no methylation, we have no formation of joy, because methylation is required to form essential methyl groups that initiate serotonin. And without that initiation of serotonin, we also are not initiating the melatonin production. So methylation, no methylation, no sleep. No sleep, no body repair. And so it becomes this cycle that just continues. So I'm asking you if you will just stop eating the foods that are not supportive of your methylation process. And you can start getting those micronutrients and those healthy phospholipids and getting more of a toxic-free diet. And then what else do you think you can create from that? That is why myself, having all the food allergies I've had in my life, and in fact, the last time I was tested at the doctor's, I do not skin test allergic to anything they've tested me to so far in this last year. And it hasn't been everything I'm allergic to, because I'm allergic to a lot of stuff. But I still have memory B cells, just like with vaccines. When you get a vaccine, your body creates this memory B cell that says, hey, if you come across someone that has the measles, now we know how to respond to the measles. And if you will find that with a lot of things that are going on today, it's the same sort of thing. If you became very sensitive to something years ago, now what's happening is that you are dealing with this memory B cell still thinking that you have this allergic reaction. So just because you've had a gluten intolerance in the past and they've tested you now and they say that you don't have a gluten problem, that doesn't mean that you don't necessarily have a problem with it. And most likely it is because of the way that the gluten is made in this country as compared to, say, France. It's a much higher gluten protein content in the US, and most of it glyphosate. So it's something very important to consider. So I hope that this has been informative, and I hope that if you have any questions about this, you will either post them below or you will reach out to me. I would love to have you think about trying what I'm using that has really worked well for my methylation cycles, and really worked well for my daughter, and really worked well for my husband, and so on and so forth, all the people I know with these MTHFR mutations. And it's really helped with my histamine levels as well. I find that I don't get as reactive as long as I am taking my capsules every day. So thank you for watching. I hope you all have a beautiful rest of your Saturday. I hope your Saturday weather is as beautiful as it is here for me. And rewatch this. It's a lot of technical information. It's a lot of things that can be complicated to understand. You may have to watch it 3 or 4 times all the way through and write down notes to start kind of connecting it all together. You've got to remember, I've been doing this for years, so it may take some time to make sense, but just know that I'm here to help you through that, and that's where I get my joy out of life. So happy Saturday. Love you guys, and I hope you understand a little bit more about methylation and histamine and proteins and how your body is functioning and how to make it function better. So I will talk to you guys later. Bye.